So today I'm doing my mid-month March wrap-up. That's all the books that I read in the first half of March. So stick around to see what they are. Well, hello friends. For those of you new around here, my name is Roger and welcome to my channel, Roger's Reads. So as I mentioned, I'm doing all the books that I read the first part of March. I always do my wrap-up in two parts, breaking it down into a mid-month wrap-up and a month-end wrap-up. So the first book that I read this month was entitled Circe by Madeline Miller. Now this has been on my TBR shelf for quite some time. I've been wanting to read this. Once that I saw it was shortlisted for the BookTube SFF Science Fiction and Fantasy Awards, I figured that this would be a perfect opportunity to finally get into it. I read the Song of Achilles a while back and I really loved it. So I was really excited to get into this one and delve into the retelling of the character of Circe from her point of view. And Circe was such a witch. No, really, she was a witch. This actually follows Circe, the infamous nymph and witch, though initially she wasn't thought to have any power of her own. So she is the daughter of Helios, who was the Titan sun god, and because she was neither powerful nor beautiful, she's pretty much ignored by her parents and set apart from the other gods. But one day she discovers that she has the power of witchcraft, in which she can transform her rivals and her enemies into monsters, which of course then threatens the power of the other gods. So Zeus and Circe's father banish her to a deserted island, and it's here on the island where she encounters or gets involved with several famous mythological figures such as Hermes, Athena, Medea, the Minotaur, and of course Odysseus, as Circe is known for her relationship with him. You know, I found it interesting how Circe's prison almost ended up being sort of a paradise for her, because it's here that she really came into her witchcraft, came into her power. You know, I absolutely adored this book and Circe's character, and I really enjoyed how this novel, told entirely from Circe's point of view, explored the voice of women in Greek mythology. So basically, Circe has been bullied, devalued, disparaged, and mistreated by both men and gods. And I love how she decided to stand apart from the both of them to obtain her vengeance. So what's interesting about her is that though she's done some pretty horrible things in the name of revenge, she still manages to retain her humanity and her compassion throughout it all. And though she is a witch and a goddess, she's also a spurned woman who has grown tired of living under the boots of power-hungry males, both human and god alike. So I really love seeing how she rose up and overcame her circumstances, and in the process became a strong, confident, and relatable heroine. She's quite a complex character, actually, caught between the world of men and gods and trying to make sense out of her own immortality. You know, it was really refreshing to see this other side of her, as she's often villainized in stories and portrayed as a thoroughly evil creature. So here the author explores Circe's motivations for doing what she does, though morally gray that they are, and this kind of renders her to be quite a likable and relatable character. It was also fun to see some of my favorite characters from Greek mythology, such as Zeus, Poseidon, Prometheus, Medea, Odysseus, Hermes, Athena, and many more. So all in all, Circe was a delightful and beautifully written, character-driven story that was engaging and lyrical, and this novel hit all the right buttons for me. It's a story about love, self-discovery, loss, regret, vengeance, anger, developing one's inner strength, and so much more. You know, Circe has now become one of my all-time favorite books. And needless to say, I gave this one 5 stars. So the next book that I read thus far in March was entitled Warrior of the Wild by Tricia Levenseller. So Tricia Levenseller is a new author for me, and this is the first of her books that I've read. So this story follows 18-year-old Rasmira, who has trained her entire life to become the warrior and protector of her village, and eventually take her father's place as the leader of the village. Now, because of her father and her skill, she's made some enemies of some of her peers. Now, every warrior has to go through this coming of age trial in order to be accepted as a warrior. Now, those who fail those trials are shunned and cast out of the village into the wild forest, which is chock full of monsters. But before they are shunned and exiled, they are given one quest to perform, and if they can successfully complete the task, they are allowed back into the village. Of course, the quest is basically a death sentence, as it is pretty much impossible to perform. So when Rasmira's final trial is sabotaged by someone she trusted, she is exiled to this monster-filled wilderness, and she is given the one task that she needs to perform to win back her honor. She has to murder the cruel and oppressive god Peruxolo, who is a powerful immortal who torments all 7 of the local villages and possesses the power to just strike down a person without touching them. So once out on her own, she encounters 2 other boys who have been exiled from their villages, and an uneasy alliance develops between them. In addition, Rasmira and her companions have to contend with all sorts of dangerous and frightening creatures out in the wild. So what follows is a wild adventure as Rasmira and her companions attempt to succeed at their impossible quests and survive in the monster-ridden wilderness in which they find themselves. It was so much fun following along with them as they attempted to succeed in their assigned tasks. But mostly, I enjoyed seeing Rasmira's character arc as she grew steadily throughout the book into an almost entirely different character by the end of it, when she realized her own mistakes and was able to move past them. So she ended up being a fierce, strong-willed, kick-ass heroine who also discovered she has a tender, compassionate side, though it took a bit for her to do so. And she ended up developing an empathy for others in the process, a quality which she kind of lacked in the first part of the story. I actually loved how all 3 characters helped each other to become the best versions of themselves. Now, in addition to the immense character growth in the story, it was also exciting and action-packed with plenty of axe-wielding, monster-fighting battle scenes and village drama. There were also several surprising twists that rendered the story exceptionally compelling. And the world building was phenomenal, with the harsh wilderness and unique, frightening monsters. Equally fascinating was the mystery of the oppressive god, his powers, and the mystery and riddle of his lair. So all in all, Warrior in the Wild is a fun, adventuresome story about friendship, honor, leadership, overcoming adversity, betrayal, redemption, finding your inner strength, and discovering your true self. So this is a survival story that has excellent pacing and intriguing plot with an utterly satisfying ending, and I will definitely plan on reading more by this author. So the next book that I read thus far this month is entitled Shah and the End of Time by Roshani Chokshi. And I actually read this in ebook format, so I don't have a physical copy of it, but I'll put the cover right up there. So this is a middle grade fantasy that was another of the SFF shortlisted books. And this follows 12-year-old Shah, an American Indian girl whose home is above the Museum of Ancient Indian Art and Culture. So She's kind of a storyteller, a fibber, and she regales her classmates with stories of her being royalty, of traveling around the world, of having a chauffeur, and she doesn't do so out of spite, but rather she does so that she can fit in with her wealthy classmates, making her life more colorful and fascinating to them. So one day, 3 of her classmates show up on her doorstep and catch her in her fibs. They also do not believe that the museum's ancient lamp of Bharata is cursed. So on a dare, she lights the lamp and all hell breaks loose. Well, not really all hell, just this sleeper, a demon who was trapped inside the lamp. So once the sleeper is freed, her mother and her classmates are all frozen in time. And if that's not bad enough, Aru learns that the sleeper's goal is to awaken Shiva, the god of destruction, and when he does, it will bring about the end of time. So all Aru has to do in order to stop the sleeper from succeeding is to find the reincarnations of the 5 legendary Pandava brothers, who are famous demigods from a Hindu epic poem, and then journey through the kingdom of death. How hard could that be? So what follows is Aru's adventures as she, along with her soul sister, who is kind of a germaphobe, whom she had just met, and a guardian angel in the form of a pigeon, as they attempt to stop the sleeper and prevent the end of the world. And in so doing, they encounter all manner of Hindu deities and creatures from legend along the way. So I did not know a lot about Hindu mythology when I started this book, so it was a lot of fun learning more about it as we tagged along with Aru's adventures. So I really ended up enjoying this whimsical middle grade story about a spunky girl who gets sucked in a world of folklore and legend, a world of gods and monsters. I really love this fast-paced story, chock full of action, quests, magic, humor, and adventures. I thought the author did an excellent job of bringing the world of Hindu mythology and folklore to life, and it made me want to delve much further into the subject. So if you like Percy Jackson, then you should enjoy this as well, as it kind of had the same vibe to it. Oh, and don't worry if you're not really up to speed on Hindu mythology. I wasn't. But the author includes a detailed and fun glossary at the end of the book to help you on your way. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book, and I'm definitely looking forward to book 2 in the series. Okay, so the next book on my list for this month is Black Leopard, Red Wolf. It's hard to get this, it's kind of glary. This is a library version of the book. Okay, so with this book, I am not going to be of the popular opinion here because I ended up DNFing this book at 300 pages, and it's 600 pages total, so I made it halfway through the book. So, you know, I heard so much high praise for this book. In fact, one booktuber whose opinions I hold in high regard said that this could easily be one of their favorite reads for 2019. Now, initially I did enjoy it, but then I found myself struggling with it more and more. So you know, this is a dark fantasy, and by dark I do mean dark. There are tons of murders, rapes, raping and murdering of children, dismemberment, disembowelment, there's cannibalism, rape by animals, and more. I think I saw one reviewer who said trigger warning for everything, and that's pretty much the case with this one. There, just about everything sick and twisted you could think of was in this book. Now, typically, I don't mind dark and somewhat twisted stories, but you know, this one was a little bit too dark even for me. And the gore and the brutality continued page after page, and at some point I started finding it really exhausting. But that wasn't the only reason I DNF'd it. The prose is super dense, and it was really a struggle to get through as I continued on with the book. And toward the end there, I found myself getting confused as to where in the hell I was, what the hell was going on, and how it all related to the story. So around the 300-page mark, I threw in the towel, and I thought, well, this book just isn't for me. Now, I don't want to dissuade you from reading the book because this book has received an enormous amount of high praise. And it seems that the majority of these people do enjoy this book, and I'm definitely in the minority here. Unfortunately, I was not one of the people who enjoyed this book, and it just didn't work out for me. You know, it's kind of funny. It's been years since I DNF'd a book, and this is the second book this year. It's only March. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm just no longer willing to put the time and effort into books that I'm just not loving. So the next book that I read this month was entitled The Opposite of Always by Justin A. Reynolds. And this is another library book that's kind of glary. So those of you who followed my channel for any length of time know that I'm kind of a sucker for the Groundhog Day / repeating a time period over and over trope. So I found the premise of this book really appealing. So this follows a young man named Jack who one night while sitting on the steps at a party meets Kate, who politely informs him that he's blocking the stairway. So they end up really hitting it off. She meets Jack's friends, she meets his parents, and they fall in love. But unfortunately, things do not go the way Jack had hoped because Kate dies. Major bummer. But Jack and Kate's story doesn't end there. You see, shortly after Kate's death, Jack is shot back in time and finds himself right back at the very beginning, at the exact moment that they met on the stairs. And there's Kate, healthy, happy, and alive, as though the past few months had never happened. So Jack is like, WTF. And he can't help but wonder whether he's going crazy or what. But regardless, he decides that if indeed he did go back in time, that he's going to do everything in his power to prevent Kate's death. So of course, as is always the case with time travel, there are consequences to our actions. And in Jack's case, they may even prove deadly for someone that he cares about. In fact, each attempt that Jack makes to save Kate, he ends up disrupting something else in his life or in the life of others, destroying the balance in his life. So at some point, Jack has to kind of decide just how far he's willing to go to save Kate. So this is a very heartfelt and moving, character-driven story about friendship, about love, about the choices we make, and time travel, and asks us, what would we do if we had the power to go back and alter the past? So I thought that this story was fascinating in its exploration of the multitude of dimensions and complexity of human relationships, and how throwing one part off balance can create havoc in the other aspects. So the opposite of always was heartbreaking in places and laugh out loud funny in others. And there really were several important lessons given in the story, but I shan't say too much more about that because I don't want to spoil the fun of you figuring them out for yourselves. So this was the kind of story that really kept me on edge, wondering that whether this was the time that Jack would succeed in saving Kate. But there were also the wonderfully developed side characters with their own history, drama, and subplots who all felt just as real and just as important to me as the main characters. So really this isn't just a romance about Jack and Kate, but it's also about all the other people in both of their lives, and it illustrates how fragile our relationships with others can be. So all in all, this was a delightful novel about choices and consequences with lovable characters, witty dialogue, and an engrossing plot. And I really loved the unique take on time travel here. So I'm going to really keep my eye on this author to see what he'll come up with next. And you know, it just struck me that the main characters in this book are Jack and Kate. Weren't those the two characters of the Titanic, the movie The Titanic? Maybe that could have been a foreshadowing of what was going to happen. But yeah, so I digress. The opposite of always. Great book. So the last book that I read thus far in March is entitled The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. So this was another shortlisted book for the BookTube SSF Awards, whose read-along is scheduled for March, and this is the first book in the Folk of the Air series. So I know that this is really a popular book last year with lots of hype surrounding it, and I've been waiting to get to it, so I finally did this month. So the story is told from the point of view of Jude, and the book opens to a scene of double murder when Jude's parents are murdered by a stranger at the door. Now, there are three sisters who witness the murder. Jude and Taryn are the twins, and Vivi is the older sister. Now, as it turns out, the stranger who murdered her parents is Vivi's birth father, Maddox, and he is a fae, and he has come for Vivi. But since he was married to Jude and Taryn's mother, he sees the twins as his responsibility as well, so he whisks all three girls off to Fairy to live with him there. So then we fast forward 10 years later, and Jude wants nothing more than to belong in Fairy, where she's living, despite her mortality and her feeling of not quite fitting in. Also, many of the Fae despise humans, especially Prince Carden, the youngest and wickedest son of the High King. Pretty much anybody who gets in his way, annoys him, or disrespects him ends up paying dearly, which Jude has several times in the past. So needless to say, Jude loathes him with a passion, to say the least. So Jude becomes deeply embroiled in palace intrigues and deceptions, and discovers secrets within secrets within secrets, and in so doing she discovers her own capacity for trickery and bloodshed, contrary to what Maddox believes about her. So I guess in this way she is starting to fit into Fairy. So as the coronation for the new Fairy King draws closer, things really begin to heat up in the book, and a betrayal threatens to destroy the entire court of Fairy. So at first, I wasn't sure whether I liked this book. I often have a problem when I don't like the main character, and I definitely did not like Jude. Though to be fair, she does endure a hell of a lot of bullying at the hands of her fake classmates, and is humiliated on numerous occasions. Now that I think about it, not a single character in the book is entirely likable, with the majority of them quite loathsome, truth be told. But I was surprised that even though I thought that Jude was untrustworthy, unlikable, a jerk, and possibly even darker than Carden, her tormentor, I ended up getting completely sucked into the story. I really love the intrigue and the political machinations of the Fairy court, along with its secrets, its plots, its schemes, the spying, the betrayals, and the murder, and was mesmerized by how utterly brutal the fairy world in this story is. So, despite my dislike for the main character, I found myself loving this book, and this dark, twisted, and messed up story really sucked me in. I love the twist after twist that came fast and furious as the novel moved toward the climax with its utterly shocking ending. So, I definitely plan on continuing on with the next book in this series entitled The Wicked King, which was just released not too long ago. So that is it for my mid-month wrap-up. So what are you reading this month? Let me know in the comments, as I always enjoy seeing what other people are reading. And also, if you like this video, I'd appreciate it if you click the like button below, as it helps my channel out. And consider subscribing if you haven't. And that about does it. I will talk to you all in the next video. Roger and out.